What is a seemingly cheap hobby that quickly becomes very expensive to continue doing? Story 1 3D printing. You start off with an $100 Ender 3 and 1 or 2 spools of basic filament. And before you know it, you have 5 printers and every possible colored filament in existence because maybe one day you'll want to print something in shimmering burgundy or light olive. Story 2. Fishing for sure. One day you're fishing a $30 Walmart combo with a worm and bobber, and the next you're hucking tungsten jigs on a several $100 combo from your $1,000+ fishing kayak. God help you if you're fly fishing or on the ocean. Story 3. Surfing. As a kid, I had one board and walked to the beach. The only recurring expense was a bar of wax here and there if you couldn't mooch some off another guy in the lineup. Then it's school or working, and you can't afford a flat spell on your days off. So it's travel. Cali, PR, Mex, Hawaii, Costa, and Centro, but you can still get skunked. Plus now you need more boards for bigger waves, reef and point breaks, wetsuits, and so on. Next on to Oz, Indo, Micronesia, and elsewhere, looking for those fabled, uncrowded, consistent waves. You make decisions on where to live so there's at least a chance of good surf at home. Moving, then having to work more to carry the increased COL living near the beach. And your wife, who is no longer the surfer girl you married, doesn't like the fact that you bail for a couple of weeks at a time to the tropics. So you teach the kids to surf, buy them equipment, and take them on trips. And after all that, and the thousands of dollars and countless hours you've spent, when you close your eyes, you still see that one crystal day when you were 13, out in the water at 40th Saint with your best friend, the image of Reed steaming down the line, toes on the nose as you paddle back out for another wave, peeking up just over there. Story 4. Running. You start out with a pair of trainers and some gym kit. Suddenly you have 5 different pairs of trainers for different runs, a Garmin, gels, a running vest, new running clothes, a massage gun, and the race costs, entry fee, travel, and accommodation are racking up. Story 5. You can buy a decent harmonica for $40, but then you need a different key and another, probably all 12. Then some low-tune ones, maybe special tunings. Then a mic and an amp. Then a better mic, another amp. Maybe you take lessons. Then you start going to jams and other people's gigs. Then, Story 6. I have a hobby farm. It's the most labor-intensive, costly way to maybe break even, but probably operate at a loss each year. Every capital expense takes 10 years' profit to pay off. The only cost-saving part of it is you're too damn busy to have any other hobbies. Story 7. Running. Oh, you can just go run. Well, running in jeans sucked. Guess I should get some running pants. Oh, damn, my feet hurt. Time for new shoes every 3 months. Fuck, my nips are bleeding. Time to ditch the cotton shirts. Wait, they're still bleeding. Guess I can get that stuff that looks like deodorant. Okay, I've been going at this a while. I'll sign up for a 5K $70. At least I get a banana at the end of it. Strava on my phone kind of sucks. I'll get a Fitbit. Oh, Fitbit broke. Time for a Garmin. If I can do a 5K, I can do a half. Jesus, $130. And I have to travel and stay overnight. Story 8. Bullet journaling. You start with a notebook and a pen. Before you know it, you have a fully stocked stationery store at home with brush pens, stickers, WAP, and stamps. Next, you buy expensive fountain pens and a collection of inks that differ only marginally in shade. Story 9. Paintball. One seemingly harmless day with a rental can lead to full autos and decked-out gear. Not even factoring in daily passes, the gas to drive out to the field, and how freaking expensive the actual paintballs are. Splatting others costs bank, yo. Story 10. Card making. You think to yourself, I can't find the perfect Hallmark card. Let me just shuttle over and find the stuff to make it. Then you're elbow deep in stamps, paper, metal cutouts. Now you need somewhere to store it all. Oh wait, what do you write in JT that captures exactly what you're hoping to say? Yano, what I'll just head to YouTube and watch the content creators who have the Dreamcraft room for this specific hobby that I now love and is basically my whole personality. Heaven forbid you just spend the $10 on a really nice card lol and call it a day. Story 11. Being an audiophile. It literally starts with someone's first IEMs or first taste of high-res music. Then it spirals down to ungodly expensive music players and equipment. Worst part is that it's only you that can hear a difference between an MP3 and a FLAC file within your friend group and other relatives. But hey, it's a fun hobby I spiraled down into. Story 12. Swinging. You start out cheap with some like-minded friends in the lifestyle, but it gets pricey fast as you get deeper into it with lingerie, fet gear, lubes, toys, hotels, and club memberships. Sometimes it's refreshing to just go back to a few close friends in a wood-paneled basement with some questionable mattresses lying around. Back to basics and fun. Story 13. Just about any hobby can become an expensive one. You can get a good chess set and clock for under $100, but once you start entering tournaments, Then you'll want to play in one 1,000 miles away with a $500 entry fee and $150,000 in prizes, etc. I recently got into hydroponic gardening. I'm trying not to add up the bills, but if I manage to get tomatoes this winter, they'll probably cost me about $5 each. Story 14, art. Lie cheap to get into. All you really need is pencil and paper. If you want to be bougie, a $15 sketchbook from Walmart. But if you get trapped on the wrong side of the community, oh my, 10,000 different colors of alcohol markers. The latest and greatest digital drawing tablet, ceiling, high stacks of sketchbooks that you will never use as far as the eye can see. Similarly, manga collecting. One volume is what, $20? But suddenly you have over 1,000 volumes, box sets, floor-to-ceiling shelves, posters, body pillows, and about 32 grand in figurines. Story 15. All of them. If there's one thing I've learned in the life of being a curious person, it's that any hobby can very quickly get out of hand if you let it. Every hobbyist I've ever met has at some point said that their particular hobby can become a huge sink once you start getting into either more advanced or more niche aspects. Story 16, climbing. You can pick up a basic harness and pair of shoes for maybe 50 quid, and you don't even need that to get started with bouldering. And then you start buying rope and carabiners, and don't even get me started on trad gear. A rack of gear for trad climbing can set you back $1,000 without a whole lot of effort. And it's not stuff you can buy secondhand unless you know you have a full and accurate history of the gear. Story 17, biking. You start with a typical Walmart bike, make some friends, and try their bike. It pedals and shifts so much better, so you go out and get a nicer cheap one from the bike shop for 3x the cost of a Walmart bike. Then you inevitably break something and have to replace it, but you might as well get the better quality part. Before you realize it, half the parts are not stock, and you have put $1,500 into a $400 bike. Story 18, mineral collecting. You can totally have a large collection for around $200. Then again, you can also spend a cool $50K on just one mineral, or trade you Bentley to a dealer for a choice specimen. There's a famous couple who are collectors and essentially let the local city museum borrow pieces for professional display. It doesn't impact their own personal collection because it's damn near over 10,000 individual pieces. The only good thing is that if you sell them, especially ones for certain closed minds, you do get most, if not all, your money back. Story 19, running. I just need my tennis. Wait, why do my feet and knees and hips hurt? Maybe I should buy some good running shoes. This is fun. I should sign up for a 5K. Wow, that was fun. I'm going to train for a marathon. What's this about Zone 2 training? I should get a watch and a heat rate monitor. Do I need another pair of shoes? How about a running backpack? I could use another pair of running shoes. When is my next race? I should travel out of state for races. What's this about 50 marathons in 50 states? What is ultra running? I should look into an ultra race. Story 20, reading. I got really into book collecting and into sci-fi/fantasy in 2020 seconds or so, and bought a lot of books. But it only started with a couple books, and then I was buying books at thrift shops, B&N, Amazon, everywhere I could find specific books I wanted. Now I use a Kindle, and I still have my books because they're aesthetically pleasing to see, but I don't buy nearly as much anymore because of Libby and other apps that make it really cheap, if not free to read. Story 21. Learning a language for fun. There's free resources at the library, free apps as well as YouTube, and a lot of times you can watch your same shows in the language at no extra cost. What could go wrong? Well, now you want the premium version of your app. Oh, this YouTuber I like has paid lesson? Well, I do really want to get better, sure, why not? Okay, but now I want to get even better, so I really need a private one. One tutor. Huh. So you're saying the best way to learn a language is to go to a country that speaks it? Then there's the final stage. I know a guy who reached this stage with Japanese. He ended up moving to Japan for 4 years. I mean, maybe it's not more expensive since you need to pay for a home here or there. But I mean, come on. That's quite the lifestyle creep. His Japanese is really good, though. Story 22. Knitting. Some projects might require many pairs of needles, and I refuse to knit with anything but the finest quality needles. Addy brand. These are like $20-25 a pair. I'm not fussy. It's just that the cheaper needles hurt my hands and suck. And even worse, just because the pattern says you need a particular needle size doesn't mean that's actually the size you'll need. You have to check your gauge first, which could require so many needle sizes if you're not lucky. Also, quality yarn and natural fibers is incredibly expensive. A skein of wool or alpaca, for example, could cost $15.35. You'd need like 15 skeins of some yarns to make any substantial project like a sweater, depending on the yardage of the skein. Prices are even higher since COVID, which is a given, but now most yarn is unobtainable. I have stopped knitting altogether. Story 23, watches. Start with an affordable quartz watch and end up needing a high horology mechanical watch that won't compete with the said quartz watch in terms of timekeeping. If you decide you like watches and enjoy having one on your wrist, it's over. There will always be a next watch you're looking at, or if I get this one, I'm done. Another hobby that snowballs fast is cars, but that is already expensive to begin with. Story 24. Cycling. You buy the bike and think right, that's sorted. Then you'll find you need all the little accessories like helmet, backpack, bottles, bottle cage, clothing, padded shorts, various gloves, etc. A service can cost as much as a car. End up buying various brushes, brake fluid, brake cleaner, sets of Allen keys, spare inner tubes, foot pump, roadside toolkit. Then you don't use it for a few months in winter, and it needs various things sorting out. Story 25, film photography. It starts with just one random camera you found at a thrift shop. Then you're dropping $15 on film, $15 on development, and God forbid you get into medium format or large format cameras. Pictures are usually nice though. I like getting all 5 likes on Instagram when I post the one of the 36 pictures that wasn't blurry or poorly exposed/framed. Story 26, all of them. My hobbies, board games, started with a $10 game. Currently several thousand spent. I don't even want to calculate how many. Coloring. Started with $20 worth of supplies. I must have also spent several thousand between coloring books and art supplies. Knitting and crochet? Ditto. Yarn gets expensive real fast, especially if you prefer natural fibers. Even if your hobby is walking, you start spending money on shoes and whatnot, LOL. Specialty shoes are needed. Story 27. Radio control. People have no idea. First, you spend more than you plan to because you find out the features you want cost more than you budgeted for. Then one thing after another goes wrong and you end up replacing parts. Batteries get damaged, chargers die, etc. The next thing you know, you've spent over $1K in less than a year, while the average hobby is under $250, and a decent starter RC is $300 plus before batteries plus charger. They are now built to do things they never could before. They're stretched beyond their means, so they break. So why spend all that money? Because when they're working, they're a lot of fun. Story 28, playing an instrument, joining a band. You start with a cheap guitar and amp. One day decide to get some nicer gear, play with pedals, and fall into the tone-chasing pit of buying and selling. Maybe you start collecting guitars. Even without going very high-end or vintage, you can easily walk into a guitar shop and drop $1 or $2 on something mid-level. You join a band, practice spaces cost money by the hour, get some gigs, pay for fuel to get there, food, maybe a few drinks. At a starting level, the fee, if any, is nothing, split between all members, and maybe once in a while one might cover costs. But probably every gig costs more money than you get until a certain level. Want to play originals and not covers? You probably won't get to that level. You just do it for the fun. Maybe you earn some pocket money playing covers at bars or weddings, but you got the guitar bug, you just spend it on another. Story 29, lightsabers. I'll just buy one new Hasbro one for $150 and then I'll be done. Well, I need another to battle with, so let me buy a used Master Replicas one for $80. Well, now I have a Kylo Ren and a Vader, so I need a Jedi saber to contrast colors. Before you know it, you're down the rabbit hole of custom hilts, 3D printed chassis, Pixel V base lit, Stunt V SFX, character hilts never produced by licensed channels, character hilts produced better by fan companies than by the licensed channels. And just like that, you've become more lightsaber than man, twisted and evil. Are lightsabers if you love Star Wars and hate having disposable income. Story 30, photography. You start taking photos with your phone camera and then eventually decide to buy a used good camera for like $200. That's the first mistake. From there, it's impossible to stop. You start trying out niches and buying new lenses. All of the sudden, you've bought a macro lens and a landscape lens and multiple portrait lenses, at which point you buy a new body, but none of your lenses fit, so you have to drop a bit on an adapter. Such a rabbit hole. Story 31, home brewing. Went down that rabbit hole a few years back. Quite a good hobby, but starts out with the Cooper's home brew pack. One fermenter, pack of yeast, and some malt/barley. Make a few brews, then you're learning about wort chillers, kegerators, temp controlling your fridge setup. It goes on. You try and justify it, but it's a really expensive and laborious way to make decent beer. Story 32, outdoors activities. I've never done it, but I know so many outdoorsy people that say they don't care about expensive things like luxury clothes, but then they'll tell you they bought a $500 tent, $300 jacket, $300 hiking boots, etc. Considering outside is free, it's so interesting to see how much they spend. Story 33, cars. People do it all the time. Take a decent running rig, throw some cheap bolt-ons at it, go to show, see the high-end, ground-up builds, then desire takes over. One quarter way in, UT becomes daunting and horrendously expensive. Most projects stall out around the one halfway point, typically because ambition and excitement rapidly overtook skill, and now they are stuck with a paperweight, no end in sight, and regret. Most people get into it knowing all about how complicated these machines can be, and they have no idea how expensive and difficult a high-end project can be. Another part of the issue is TV shows making stuff look simple as 1, 2, 3 definitely sets false expectations. Story 34. Axe throwing to some degree. It's not expensive to get into, but once you've gotten good at it, you'll want more axes to try out and join more leagues and start traveling for tournaments. It's super worth it though. I never would thought I'd be spending this much to do this, but it's still worth it, MO. Story 35. Video game collecting. It started off in 2020 with 2 NES consoles and an N64 I bought from a guy. Sold them, used the money to buy more stuff and sell what I didn't want to keep. The year goes on and I'm doing weekly trips to the city, 4-hour return drive. I make enough to blow $700 AUD on a Virtual Boy, so I'm doing well. I make $5K in about 2 years. Not bad, I think. Then someone offers me a broken Game Boy for cheap. Well, that's an easy fix, I think. So I fix it and sell it. Then I meet a guy who's cleaning out his dad's shed and has a bunch of old consoles, so I buy them off him and go to repair them. Then I end up with 8 boxes of stuff in the lounge room, telling myself I'll get those done when I'm off from work in a few weeks' time. And nearly 5 years later, my room is full of slowly selling gaming stuff. I've got tools and half-disassembled consoles everywhere. But it started out with a $100 marketplace purchase. Story 36. Running, especially in the colder climates. I started running in the summertime and wore only butt, socks and shoes, shorts, sunglasses, and hat on runs. I needed a handful of pairs of short, that is it. By wintertime, I needed a bunch of long and short sleeve shirts so I could layer. I needed windbreakers, winter hats, balaclavas, neck warmers, gloves, and I need multiple of each of those because I sweat so much during each run. I've spent approx $1K on running in the less than a year, and that isn't including running shoes. Story 37. Beekeeping. Not only money, but time. And you start year 1 with 2 hives, then 3, then 7, then 14, then 21. Next thing you know, you are sucked into to seeing if you could make an on-paper profit and having delusions of grandeur while going from part-time commitment to second full-time job until something gives. Then you pull back because life happens, but always remember that 1 year you could have turned a legit profit. Story 38. I can't scroll anymore. How has no one said golf? You start out cheap enough with Goodwill or hand-me-down clubs. You play a $18 round at your local Muni. You wear a regular old collared shirt. Then you start to think new clubs will be what makes me better. A rangefinder will help my game. Let's please book an all-inclusive golf resort instead of going to the Jersey Shore. Story 39. Skateboarding doesn't become very expensive, but it is a lot more expensive than you think. You just buy a skateboard and you're good, right? Nah. As you get better, everything on the skateboard becomes a consumable. You get to the point where you are replacing the deck every month for $80, the bearings every 3 months for $40, and the trucks every 6 months for $60. Not to mention you're getting new shoes 3-4 times a year at $75 a pop because skateboarding is completely based around getting the board into the air by scraping your shoes against sandpaper. Story 40. Coin, currency, and even exonumia collecting. It usually starts out with either finding some interesting coins / notes in your change, or inheriting some old piece of furniture / decor and finding a forgotten coin stash inside. It quickly stops being passive collection, so you find yourself on eBay at 3 a.m., scrolling through thousands of scam listings to find 1 or 2 legit listings for exactly what you need to feed your full-fledged addiction. A 12-pound lot of mixed world coins under $13/LB. Just to hold you over for a couple weeks until your next fix. Or, so I've heard. Story 41. Driving fast. Autocross can be done with your daily. All you need is a helmet. Most people already have most of what you need to get started. Autocross isn't going to hurt anybody. The occasional track day can't be too bad either, right? Bam! Now you have a separate race car, you daily your tow rig, and you're constantly looking for parts on Marketplace. Story 42. Horseback riding. First you decide to get a horse, and then your horse could use a friend. And besides, you need a spare horse, so you get 3, not to mention thousands of dollars of tack. You keep buying horses because you become addicted. Next thing you know, you're moving to Kentucky and buying a horse farm to house all of your horses. True story. You start breeding your horses because you want to make more nice horses. Now you need to put up a bigger barn. You get a couple of tractors and all of the equipment that you need to make hay. You spend thousands on fencing, waterers, feeders, etc. It never ends. This is a hobby that is so rewarding but will drain you financially. They say the way to make a small fortune with horses is to start with a large fortune, and then get horses. I believe it. Story 43. Magic the Gathering. You can play Commander cheap by buying a pre-con for 40, 80 bucks. Then you want to build your own deck, and once you get the good cards you want to actually use for higher power level games, decks can get to 1K plus real quick. One thing I will say though is, if your group plays at a lower power level, always it's not that bad to get into. But once you want to build higher power decks or play any of the competitive formats, it gets pricey quick. Story 44. You get those succulent Lego sets at Costco for $22. Suddenly 2 months later, you have sold your house just so you can buy that Lego Rivendell set. Serious one though, a proper fish tanks. The days of keeping a betta in a $12 fish bowl are long over. You need to drop minimum couple $100 for a proper, cared-for fish tank and a lot of knowledge to keep it going. That goes for most pets. I stand by it. Taking care of a couple reptiles can be more expensive than a dog. Live food isn't cheap. Story 45. Bowling. You start getting good enough to buy your own bowling ball, just a cheap $50.91. But now you need to learn how to hook, and only the good one have an internal core. $200. Now you need your own shoes. $50 plus for something cheap. You also need a bowling bag for your 2 balls. But lane conditions change, and you need a different ball for different oil patterns. Good luck. Plus, every time you go out and bowl, even though you get a discount if you're on a league, it adds up. I started out just doing $25/week as a pastime. Story 46. Playing guitar. It's never really settled. Got all the pedals you think you need? Now I want a flanger. My tube amp is getting too heavy, so I think I'll get a digital tone master. And the EPI Firebird needs new pickups and wiring. The Jazzmaster switch is making noises. There's a cable on the pedal board that's also making noise. The guitars that get played also need new strings and a setup. It never stops. Story 47. Magic the Gathering. Majority of cards are essentially chaff, not worth the cardboard they are printed on. People will just give you cards. Then you realize that to be competitive, you have to have the best top 1% of the printed cards. And next thing you know, you're spending far more money on this game than most hobbies. Story 48. Rock climbing. Oh wow, how fun and whimsical. Just look at the dirt bags of the 1970 S80, S90, and today they just ate cans of soup, fornicated freely, and sang camp songs. Cheap and fun. Long gone, bro. The dirtbag life can be had, but in this economy, difficult and short-sighted. How does a guy retire? And the gear is expensive as all. I told myself and my ex, oh yeah, it's all so inexpensive. Buy it once and forget it for a while. True, but the addiction is real if you want it to be. I want it to be, and thus it's fun and consuming. Story 49. Gaming in general. Starts with free games on your smartphone. Then a $50 DS or $100 Switch. Then a $400 home console. Then a $1,200 gaming PC. Then $2,000 worth of upgrades and new hardware. And that's not even counting the money it takes to buy games. And now game platforms are going to the cloud with subscription-based streaming. Gamers are basically just having their bank accounts automatically siphoned for software that we don't even own. Story 50. Stop motion animation. You start doing it, think, oh, it's just for fun, but then people start complimenting your work even though it's bad, and it makes you want to do better and better, and then you start spending money on the Premium version, then you buy CapCut Pro, then you buy more sets to make even better shots. Then you buy a second phone for a remote camera, and it goes on and on and on. Story 51. Dungeons and Dragons, or tabletop gaming in general. I was lured in by the fact that almost everything you want is freely available online. Character options, rules, monsters, adventures, everything. You can even download a dice roller or use a virtual tabletop like Roll20, all completely free. But it's hard to resist the urge to have something more physical, maybe a set of dice, maybe your own miniature, probably some paint for that miniature. Well, now you've got all that paint, why not get another mini, or 2, or 3? And that one dice set is fine, but it's been rolling undesirable numbers lately. How about a new set, and maybe a nice dice tray, or even a dice tower to make rolls feel better and have more randomly distributed odds? Oh, a new rule book came out with a bunch of new character building options. You've got to have that. Maybe consider one of the other books that you don't already have, and the room you play in could use some decorations to help it feel more thematically appropriate. I think you can see how this all goes. I've spent a small fortune on D&D over the years. I don't regret it one bit though, and I'm always looking at new ways to ruin my finances with it. I'm also a guitarist, and that's another huge money sink, but that's not exactly as cheap as a pen and paper game. Story 52. Bass. Seems relatively cheap to start, a couple grand for a used rig off FB and some safety gear. Then you're home free, maybe a new pilot chute or slider here and there for different elevations or objects. No $30 plane rides to altitude, no lift tickets at the mountain, no real recurring expenses. Life is good. Then the medical bills hit, and you're wrapped in fiberglass for months and living in some dude's basement in Twin Falls, Idaho. Story 53, golf. Clubs and balls, fancy driver, fancy putter bag, gloves, nice clothes, golf shoes, tees, towels, etc. Green fees. Cart fees. Saturday starts with a 6 a.m. wake-up and concludes with beers over a late lunch, so it costs lots of time just to play. Costs way, way, way more time if you want to play well and not be frustrated the whole time. And we haven't even talked about country club memberships yet. Some folks need more than one so they can get on different courses easily. Story 54, when you become a collector in anything. My friend has 50 Shimano reels for fishing. Another friend has his garage kitted out with Milwaukee tools. My friend bought a cut-off saw for $500, and in the past 4 years, I've only seen him use it 2 times. Then there's these collector's items like Funko Pops and Nendoroids where you need a particular character to complete a set, and you can only get them from eBay, and they're like $300 because it's vaulted. Story 55, railway modeling. The basic starter set isn't too much money, so that's great. Oh wait, it's just a little oval of track. I'll need to expand that out into some branches and sidings, and maybe get some more locomotives in stock. Now the scenery will need doing, because it's all just on a bare baseboard, so I'll need materials for all that. And now there's a new locomotive released, and it looks superb. What's that? You can upgrade the entire layout to digital control and operate the whole thing using a mobile phone app? Well, that seems like a no-brainer. Story 56, snowboarding. Started with hand-me-downs and a $150 board. Has snowballed into $1,000 boards. 1,700 passes every season. Used to hit the slopes with $400-500 in gear collected over years. Now it's $2,000-3,000 collected over many more years. First, it was whatever got me on the snow. Then it was gear that was more reliable. Then it was gear that looked cooler, matched better. That was more waterproof, less foggy, and on it goes. Next is multiple boards for multiple different conditions, and even better gear for even more waterproofing. It never ends. Story 57, designer board games. You can pick up a board game from Target for $30. Then you find out there's other games similar. Then you find games based on art. Then you start getting friend groups, going to board game cafes. Now you need to buy a new shelving unit just to store all your games. Now I have 3 different shelving units, over 150 games. Special inserts for a handful. Upgraded components for a handful. We're looking at getting a $3K table designed for board games, and I still want more. Story 58. Art, traditional or physical art, can cost a lot, as good quality paper or color is a lot. Painting can be more expensive as you need paint, a canvas or paper, brushes, and a paint palette of some kind. If you use oil paint, you need paint thinner and cleaner because warm water won't clean oil paint. For digital art, you have the upfront cost of a tablet and laptop. And half the apps needed require a subscription to work. I mean, you can get the cheapest supplies possible, but the quality is not the best and probably works worse. Story 59, an odd one, chocolate. As in making your own from scratch. What the? I had no idea it was this expensive. So first you need a Mellinger, cool $400, and you can't use anything else. Then the actual molds you need alone are $50 each. Cocoa beans, $50, $100 a kilo. Cocoa butter, expensive as. Then all the fillings cost a bunch. Then you always need more molds or different ones. Then you gotta grind for like 2 days. My God, I had no idea what Pandora box I was opening. Definitely not worth it. IMO. Also, I have never dealt with anything more infuriatingly messy in my entire life. Ironically, I got into it because I thought I could save money. Ha ha ha. Including man hours. A single one of my bars would cost probably $18. All in all, though, it's kind of fun. Story 60, music. The simplest tap of your finger can turn into a ton of instruments you have bought over the years for a specific use case. It's crazy. Like one guitar is nice, yeah. Imagine 5, a bass, sax, synth, pedals for synth, cable for synth that came included in the box, but I use it to charge my phone. Speakers. You will burn money. I've gone in the red. Oh, I've gone so far into the red. I think the lower you go, the color slightly changes. You see, like, musicians make unfathomable money. Sure, for stadium and household names you buy at the grocery store electronics section, but God, those expenses. Imagine them. Hooli, lodging, transportation, security, and venue location. Expensive my ass. Being a musician is a logistical ass job. It's one smooth operation that will, and I mean will, get it if you blink wrong. Then there's DIY. A road-tested ritual of rights bestowed upon gas budget and gas station jerky for 2 weeks. Beer optional, but included. This one needs up being the most expensive because you're toting your ass around America's 15 slightly major small towns. Yes, including the Midwest, tire pops, roadside mechanic. But endgame music user is behind a lot of wires and cables just twiddling a knob, sometimes a fader. That's a multi-$1,000 setup too. Just tap a pencil, upload to YouTube. There's a kid at 15 who's making the craziest you've never heard before. And there's a band who's 2 decades old now with like 30 album sales this week. It's emotionally expensive too. Story 61. Brewing coffee often starts with the basics, a French press or pour-over setup. But before you know it, you're eyeing expensive espresso machines, high-quality grinders, and fancy accessories like milk frothers, tampers, and precision scales. It's a slippery slope. And before long, the pursuit of the perfect cup turns into an ongoing investment in better gear and premium beans. The joy of perfecting each step in the process becomes addictive, and it's hard not to get caught up in the excitement of upgrading your setup. It's a fun and sometimes pricey journey. But in the end, there's something incredibly satisfying about crafting that perfect cup, no matter the cost. Story 62. I'm surprised no one has said cooking or baking, especially because a lot of people get into it as a necessity to save money, and then it gets out of hand, LOL. For baking, it starts like, hooray, I made a beautiful birthday cake for Tilda, $5.10 worth of materials, and it's rustic and cute and tastes just as good as a grocery store. Then you start buying cool pans for fun shapes. Then you dabble into more complex stuff like macarons and buy a silicone mat. Then you get into cookies, and now you think, $3 for a gourmet cookie recipe isn't too bad. Then you buy 5 recipes and feel a little silly since the internet is full of free ones. Then you start buying flavorings and extracts and sprinkles and higher-end cocoa and vanilla. Then you're buying name-brand fancy chocolate and candies to get that specific flavor. Then you're giving treats for friends and buying cute packaging. And to think you got into this for a cheap cake. Cooking can stay cheap. It usually does, until it doesn't. My brother is about a decade into the salmon or chicken plus rice or potatoes meal prep grind. Meanwhile, I found myself making a pot roast or a bolognese sauce or ham or garlic confit for dinner when pre-hobby me would have been fine with a package of prosciutto and a protein shake. Story 63. My next-door neighbor a couple years ago started jogging in the mornings. Never ran in their life. It was just this, it's free quick exercise when I wake up before showering and going to work. Now they travel the world to run marathons. Between the time off work, training, and recovering, I can't imagine what their travel expenses are. And these aren't exactly vacations. They travel to perform a regimented task and spend days preparing and recovering during the trip, so it's like, it just sounds awful. Runners are another breed. Story 64. Keeping fish. You start with a couple of neon tetras or a betta of fish and everything is good. Then you get a bigger tank, maybe a better filter. But while at the local fish shop you found, you see some very different fish. They need their own tank with a sump filter. Then you discover aquascaping and show fish. The next thing you know, you have a fish room for the additional tanks with central air pumps, and instead of individually heating the tanks, you insulate the room and install air heating. Then you discover reef tanks, and that's when you start Googling, how much can I get for my kidneys? Story 65. Anything involving trains. First you start out with a notepad and pen just to jot down the locomotive numbers. Then you buy a model locomotive, but then expand that to a massive fleet of them. And before you know it, you've got an attic filled up with a massive layout that's miles long, thousands of locomotives, carriages, and wagons, and even end up part-owning a real-life full-sized locomotive, which is a financial black hole in itself. Oh, and train simulators and all of the DLC that comes with them, cheaper to buy a real locomotive, but see above. Story 66. Building models, especially the high-quality ones, and if you want, go professional, you spend a fortune. Like Warhammer, you pay on average $50 for 5 small-ass plastic figures. But the real money drain are paints and equipment. Oh, that color isn't very suitable. Let's buy that one. Or the entire set for sometimes $100. Oh, high-quality brushes. How much can they cost? Oh, and you may have to replace them after a time if the tip is worn out. You want to modify your figurines? How about this? Bending tools, sanding paper, 3D printers, STL files, saws, knives, modellation putty, etc. And how about a place where everybody can see your build models? Story 67. Online gaming. Think about it. I am addicted to a particular game, 8-Ball Pool, and started out with the free level and resisted temptation for quite some time to go to the paid level. Now I started on the paid level, and I would just buy 1 or 2 of the paid level items, $1.99 or $2.99 or so. Next thing I knew, I was buying the $69.99 or $99.99 level and ran out of tokens just as fast. Nope, I backed out of that really quick. Story 68. Tennis. You buy a racket and some balls, a pair of shoes, shorts, and shirt, and you think that's it. Then you realize you are crap and you get a couple of private lessons, which soon becomes one every week. Join a club and have group training sessions twice a week. Join a second club and do the same. Then you start playing competitively and soon realize one racket isn't enough. You need 2 or 3 identical ones, and you have to replace the strings every 3 or 4 weeks. Of course, after a year, you feel like trying a different racket, so that's another 3 to buy, and more strings. And then the clothes. How many tracksuits, shoes, tops, and shorts do you really need? The answer is loads. Story 69. Distance running. You can start with a $30 trainer and doing 20 kilometers a week, but once you get adds up, it goes to 80 kilometers to maintain basic fitness and can peak at 120K per week as a non-professional. You have to eat a lot to hedge the calories burned, so grocery bills would be 2+ times than average. Not only will you swap to better training shoes, but you'll invest into racing shoes, which is $250 per pair and has only 150 effective kms. And there'll be costs to travel to different races on top of those. Story 70. Gunplay, Gundam models. You start out with a cheapy $20 HG of some sort. Then you want an RG for a bit more. Wait, you want modeling tools to make it look nicer? What about some paint? That doesn't work. Let's buy more expensive paint. Oh, hey, there's an MG model for $60. That's not so bad, but he might get lonely. Let's buy 2. Wait, we need more paint. Why not a paint gun? Oh, hey, here's a little paint booth. La 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 la. Oh my. There's a perfect grade for $300. That's a good deal, but we're gonna need new shelving. Yes, it's an addiction. I didn't get too deep, just 1 PG, but I've got some friends that have sunk a lot of money into it. Story 71. Modifying your car. You start with a nice set of speakers and maybe a subwoofer to listen to your favorite tunes. Might buy some lowering springs since it looks cool. Before you know it, you are buying rusted-out buckets for the engine or trans, and Frankensteining your own build while buying car after car because you can't keep your daily driver stock, so now you need a new one. Combined with the frustration of the project car that is now standing on jack stands for the past 2 years, not being finished while parts slowly fill the room. And now you have no motivation to put everything in the car because you know some random is going to break and you are this close to losing your cool and setting the car on fire. Story 72. Resin art. First, you get a small bottle of UV resin and a small mold to make a keychain, maybe some pigments. And slowly you start wanting to make every mold you see, but the bigger the mold, the more expensive it is because more resin and the bigger molds cost more than the smaller. Break a mold, another purchase. Run out of resin or pigments or inlays or flakes or chameleon powders or Story 73, playing paintball. It starts with a friend telling you to just buy a used old marker, paintball gun, and some pods you can carry in your pocket for paintballs. Maybe $200 to start. But then you suck because your gear sucks. So you gotta upgrade to a better marker, compressed air tank instead of CO2, a better mask, a better harness. Easily $600, $1,000 for basic entry-level decent stuff, which still suck. Honestly, you'll probably spend $3,000 or so to get equipped. Then, every time you go play, it's $20 for admission, $10 for all-day air refills, a case of decent paint is $60, $70, and you'll get to where you need 2 of them for a day of play. So every single time you want to play, it's nearly $200 after taxes. Imagine if every time you wanted to go play a game of basketball with your friends, it cost almost $200. Story 74. Tennis. It started with someone's old free racket and a $3 can of balls. Then it turns into a couple $100 racket. Then you need at least a couple. Tennis is a highly technical sport, so until you're at a high skill level, it is common to have group or private lessons or drills multiple times a week that can cost $3,100 plus each time you play. The real kicker is court time if you live anywhere that gets cold. The absolute cheapest club where I live will run you $250 a month just for membership and court time, ~30/hour, is on top of that. It is wildly easy to spend at least $1,000 a month. Story 75. As an aside, ones that aren't necessarily that expensive include geocaching. I don't do it much now, but I still know a lot of people in the top 10 in the UK. The main cost is fuel. If you're retired and can run an EV, it's definitely on the end of cheap retirement hobbies. Back in the day, it could get really expensive because a handheld GPS was hundreds of pounds. These days, your phone is just as good, but have a battery pack on hand. Otherwise, a decent set of shoes and a $30 premium account and a pen and you're good. There are, of course, ridiculous things you could spend money on, but it's one of those hobbies where it probably won't help you. I meet people doing literally thousands a year and they have no fancy gear, just a phone each and outdoor clothes. Story 76 violin. I rented one for a year for $200. What a bargain. It's a very nice beginner instrument. Then you find a teacher. $75 per lesson. She is great and well-versed in the subject. Then you have to have humidity control for the dry winter months. Don't want your rental to get damaged. Then your strings need replaced, and the chin rest isn't comfortable, so I'll need a new one of those. And I'd like a shoulder rest as well. And I want to play some Beatles songs, so I'll buy some sheet music. But it's super fun and rewarding to learn and make progress. Story 77. Here, have some Pokemon cards. If you want to start collecting, get some boosters. Just a few bucks for 11 cards. Need to build a deck? Try a starter deck or booster bundle. Need to optimize that deck with powerful cards and supplement them with the right tools? Buy this booster box. Want a chance at this really rare and expensive cards? Get these elite trainer boxes while stocks last. Want access to some ultra-rare exclusives? Fight other middle-aged men at Walmart for the ultimate premium collection. Have rare cards now? Get them graded. Didn't get the grade you wanted? Buy boxes of boxes from the supplier. Starting to look at those gem mint grails? How your crypto doing? Story 78. I avoided iRacing for a long time because I knew how badly I'd get sucked into it. I finally joined last year. I was right. There's the monthly subscription, of course. But then I just got to have this or that car. And now that I have a cool car, and the series is racing on these tracks that I don't have yet. And I bought a cheapish wheel and pedals off eBay. But they're not good enough. Neither is my gaming laptop or the kitchen chair I'm using. I need a real rig with a real computer system running it. OTS ones are pricey, but maybe I could build my own. I could do it out of wood, but metal would be cooler. And if I learned to weld, then that's the one thing that would keep me from working on my own car if I was to pick up a spec Miata or spec racer Ford. How much do those cost anyway? And what's an SCCA competition license cost? I'd need a truck and trailer, and my car's getting pretty old. I haven't even spent the real money yet, but I'm in the hole, near the surface, looking down, and I don't see the bottom.